Good morning, everyone. To be honest, I'm a bit clueless, looking at the list of all the speakers here this morning. Everybody has a Wikipedia page on them except me. So I was like, what am I doing here, right? So thank you to Knowledge Factory, thank you to Meena for giving me this opportunity to come here and share our story with you all. I'm a first-generation entrepreneur, co-founder and CEO of Arboreal, a plant biotechnology company. I think this is also the right time for me to kind of stop and look back at the journey that we have had so far, because we are going to be 5 years old in March. This presentation kind of gave me that opportunity that I kind of sat down and thought about how far we have come. We have traveled quite a lot of distance and of course miles to go before I sleep. So at Arboreal, we are trying to develop natural plant-based preventive solutions for diabetes and obesity. So my mother has been a diabetic for the last 25 years, and I've seen her struggle firsthand. And like I was saying in the video as well, I'm sure most of you here sitting, you have a family member who is diabetic, or you know somebody who is diabetic. That is the scale this disease has reached. And I think it's time that it gets more attention from funding agencies, governments, scientists, researchers, medical professionals. And I'm glad that at Arboreal we are at least able to make a dent in that landscape. Over the last 5 years, we have single-mindedly worked on just one product, which is Stevia. It's a zero-calorie, completely natural sweetener. It's completely safe for women and pregnant women and children as well. And we have built a unique integrated value chain. What I mean by that is that we do everything end-to-end. So right from actually working with smallholder farmers in rural India to actually cultivate the plant, to processing it, and then formulating customized solutions for our customers. We do everything end-to-end. And over the last 5 years, we have done deep scientific interventions at every step to ensure the quality of the product and also to address some of the issues that Stevia used to have that some of you might even be aware of. Today, we are the only manufacturer of Stevia in India and among a very handful globally. I personally am an engineer by background. I went to IIT Dhanbad and then went to Imperial College London as a Commonwealth Scholar, completed my master's there, then worked in London and Singapore for a few years as a consultant and an investment professional. I also got an opportunity to work with Al Gore at his fund, Generation Investment Management in London. And then in early 2015, I decided to quit my job in Singapore and come back to India with the intention to start an agriculture company. So a lot of people ask me that, how did you take that plunge, that risk to actually quit your well-established career and just jump into a completely new territory, agriculture, that I honestly had no experience or background in. So I tell them that it wasn't sudden at all. It was a well-thought-out decision taken on the basis of the work that I had been doing 4 years before that. So the seed of Arboreal was sown back in 2011 when I was studying at Imperial. So we were a group of 5 students, and we were trying to work on a business model where we could help smallholder farmers and forest dwellers to actually try and derive more value out of the forests without destroying them. So basically, this was a project around non-timber forest products. But the trigger for me happened in 2012 when we actually went for a community visit in Mandla district of Madhya Pradesh. I still clearly remember that visit. I remember we were 4 people. We managed to convince the Gram Pradhan to get us a meeting with around 10 farmers. And the idea was to share, more about what we were trying to do and get some on-ground local insights. And as we started talking to them, we realized that they were not interested in our project at all, because they were handling and they were grappling with some very basic fundamental issues. We realized that the government had given 5 acres of land to every single farmer family there so that they could cultivate it and make a living. Unfortunately, they were not able to make any use of that land because they didn't have water. I clearly remember there was a 60-year-old tribal farmer who stood in front of me with folded hands and said, "Pani dila do," which means, "Please arrange water for us." And this shook me to the core. If you look at it, it's not that big a problem to solve, right? But what had I done? I was 26 years old. What had I done to have deserved his hope and trust? And that kind of, made me think that if I don't use this opportunity, if I am privileged enough to be able to actually do something, I kind of have a responsibility to actually act on it. And with time, I kind of grew, more confident that this is what I wanted to do. I started talking to different players in the ecosystem. And with my research, I realized that if I wanted to impact more number of people on a sustainable basis, the best pathway was probably to set up a self-sustainable, socially conscious business. And that's what I set out to do. Stevia, of course, came later as an afterthought. When we started doing more market research, we realized there was an unmet demand. Diabetes was growing. People were looking for alternatives to sugar. There was this huge trend towards fitness coming on around the world, not just in India. So we were convinced of the product, and everything kind of felt like falling into place. We had a product that had a potential to benefit a huge population that had diabetes. Then obviously the raw material had to come from the farms, and the farmers would benefit by actually growing it, and the technology as well. So everything that I really cared about kind of became a part of this puzzle. So I call it serendipity, that it happened that way, and it was kind of the mix of all the right things that I wanted to do. So I'm not someone who would do a business just for the sake of making money. Making meaning and purpose was always very important for me. But whatever we have done so far, we have done a lot of work on the biotechnology side, on food technology side as well. We have our own lab in Lucknow where we actually do hardcore scientific stuff. But on the core, we are an agriculture company. In fact, in the first 3 years of our journey, we actually spent a lot of time, focus, and money in actually getting the agri bit right. So me and my co-founder, Manish, we used to actually stand on the farms, get the work done. We learned farming ourselves as well. And that's how we started, and that's how we have come so far. And today we employ about 250 people on our farms, and we are positively impacting 100 farmer families that we plan to scale to 500 this year and to 5,000 in the next 5 years. So this has been a tough journey, and people often ask me that why and how did you decide to get into agriculture, and what were the challenges, especially as a woman entrepreneur, right? And I can tell you that it has been nothing but easy. We have literally been threatened for our lives. Our facilities have been put on fire, not once, but multiple times. Our employees have had life-threatening accidents. But we have all stuck together, and I think I'm really privileged and lucky to have found such people who believe in the mission as much as I do. And it's really the sense of commitment that we have towards actually making a difference in the world that I think keeps us together and keeps us going. Obviously, I don't want to paint a gloomy picture. It wasn't just all struggles. and hardships, there were accolades and success as well. I was selected as the Asia Pacific Laureate by Cartier, INSEAD, and McKinsey in 2018. Our work with farmers was widely covered by media, by BBC, Rajya Sabha TV, both by national and international media houses. So that's what entrepreneurship is like, right? It's a mix of extreme lows and extreme highs, and I think how you persevere is what makes all the difference. How you react to adversity is going to decide whether you succeed or not. So today, I can see that there are a lot of students, in the audience, and there's one thing that I always notice, and it's a bit disheartening, is that agriculture, despite being such a big sector, it supports 65% of our population, 13% of our GDP, but still very few people, very few engineers go into this sector. I mean, if I look at my batchmates from IIT, my juniors, my seniors, I can literally count them on fingers. But being in this sector and working here for the last 5 years, I can tell you that the opportunities in this sector are humongous. And I would encourage you to try and explore the opportunities here and also get into the uncharted waters. So that's it. And any questions? How many of you want to be entrepreneurs? Can we have a quick show of hands? Good, that's a decent number. So yeah, I mean, let's keep it interactive. If you have any questions.
Thank you for sharing your story. I had a question, since you're from a very technical background. How technology is helping, like in agriculture? You want more people to get into, like, say, the agriculture industry. And like, are there improvements? I've seen, like, in the Western world, you see that technology has improved whatever production, etc., right? Do we see the same results in India? I mean, is there some, like, motivation for more people from technical backgrounds to get into, say, this industry?
Yeah, so thankfully, in the recent years, there has been quite some development. There are quite a few startups that are working on new technology, based on sensors, drones, even AI application in agriculture. So that's happening, but I think it's a bit slow. The lag that I have really seen is on the engineering side. So what happens is that in our own farms, we use some very simple, just to give you an example, we use some very simple basic mechanical tools. And those also we have to import from Germany, because it seems like nobody makes them that well in India. Because with a manual tool, I mean, it's the design, but it's also the weight that makes it easy for the labor to work with. And nobody in India does that kind of work, which I find very, very unfortunate. And this is a very small example. There are a lot of other machines that we are totally dependent on, Western countries for. And they are like really basic machinery that can be done easily, I think, if someone puts their mind into it. Any more questions?
No, in spite of being a doctor, I don't know much about stevia. Can you please tell me about the market availability and studies related to that?
Yes, so stevia has been around for about 200 years. It's a native to South America. It was brought in India around 2008, but it has received approval only in 2015. And that's the reason you probably haven't seen it a lot, because it has gotten approval recently and now it's starting to come in the market. But there are a few tabletop sweetener products in the market. I didn't mention, we have a product as well. We launched it recently in December. It's called Magic Leaf Stevia. It's a tabletop sweetener, so you can just use it like sugar or other sugar-free products that you have in the market. So it's coming in the market. The developments are happening. We are also working with some B2B companies, food and beverage companies, who would be incorporating our stevia in their products. And in the next quarter, you would see them in the market. In terms of studies, it has been extensively studied. It has been approved by FDA, EFSA, FSAI. More than 150 countries globally have approved stevia. So it's completely safe. And it's now, I think, the next, I wouldn't call it aspartame, but it's going to capture a bigger share in the alternative sweeteners market space.
Hello, Swati. I want to know the same thing. Stevia, how is it? Is it like sugar, and how is the process? How is it made? Could you tell me in a simple way how it has been developed?
Right. So it is made from the stevia leaf. So it, as I said, that it's a natural product. It comes from a plant, and the leaf of the plant is sweet. So we use that leaf, and then we process it further using a completely organic process. This is also something that we've developed in-house, doing our own R&D. And it's a completely natural process. We don't use any chemicals in the entire process, but the output would be white powder or a liquid that you can then directly use in your products.
Hi, Swati.
Yes.
Wanted to know, you talked about building a sustainable value chain. Can you elaborate a little bit about that, about what aspects of sustainability you guys are currently focusing on, and what do you all envision to do going forward?
Right. So sustainability has been very core to everything that we do. And that is the reason that we, like I said, we developed this extraction technology in-house as well. There are technologies available off the shelf that we could have bought, but then we decided that we didn't want to go that route. They use a lot of chemicals. It's a very polluting process. So we spent around 2 years in R&D to ensure that we have a process that is completely natural. There are no discharge or effluents, that are harmful for the environment. So that's one. On the cultivation side itself, we work closely with farmers, and we basically educate them on the new technologies, smart agriculture technologies. We use more efficient irrigation systems like sprinklers and rain gun systems rather than flood irrigation. In itself, stevia cultivation is actually much more sustainable than sugarcane or a lot of other food crops, including rice, because it uses much less water than any of these crops. So, yeah.
So I have a question, Swati. You had talked about the fact that you got the inspiration and the idea after participating in a business case contest.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure as students and as members of an institution, we participate in many such business case contests, almost half-heartedly most of the time, just because we have to make a tick, But you actually got so triggered by it and motivated that you actually created an entirely new career. So we'd love to understand how that happened.
Sure. So this was basically a summer school organized by the European Union, where they actually selected students from all around Europe, and then they took us on a journey for 6 weeks all around Europe. So we spent some time in Switzerland, some time in Germany, some time in UK. And the idea was to basically take these students on a trip and kind of expose them to what's happening around, meet entrepreneurs, meet potential investors, researchers, and try and see if they can encourage these students to come together and form teams and do something. So that is the summer school that I attended, and I really see that as kind of one of the key turning points in my career, because before that, I was a technical student, I was an MSc student, and I was probably planning to go for a PhD later. But then this entire exposure to the business world, and it was really new for me. I mean, I do not come from a business background. Nobody in my entire family or extended family has ever built a business. So it was all new for me, and it was kind of the first exposure that I got to the business world. And I realized that whatever I wanted to do on the impact side, I could do that, by building a business as well. And probably it would have a bigger impact rather than just trying to probably study and do more research and publish more papers. So, yeah.
Question, is your extraction process like a cottage industry, or is it like a industrial scale?
It's an industrial scale process.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Swati. How do you ensure that your process, because we hear a lot of horror stories of, refining sugar, and artificial sweeteners are supposed to cause Alzheimer's and all sorts of things. Now, how do you ensure that your product is free and safe?
Right. So if you look at the chemistry of stevia, there are a lot of long-term studies that have been done, and it has been established that it's safe. But for our process, we have developed it in-house, and we are manufacturers ourselves. So we are not outsourcing the manufacturing bit. We really control every step of the value chain, like I said, right from actually cultivation to processing, and then taking it to the market. So that kind of allows us to ensure that we can put in and implement all those practices that we want. Also, in our process, there are no effluents. So we treat everything, and we do not discharge anything in the environment.
Hello, Madam Swati. I'm Preeti here.
Hello.
Very happy to listen to your success story. With regard, how you being a woman, are there other farmers who are women working with you? And if so, does their impact, is it there on rural development, rural amplification? Is it leading to somewhere good in the rural environment? This is what I wanted to know.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, 85% of our farmers are women. And not just the farmers. Also, we have our propagation propagation facilities where we have nurseries and polyhouses, shade houses that we operate. And that part of our entire operation is very, very labor intensive. So we hire a lot of labor on that front as well. And there also up to 90% is women. And this is a change that I'm seeing, at least in North India where we work, which is UP, Uttarakhand, and Jharkhand, that it's actually women who are managing households these days. And they are the key decision makers. They are the ones who are working really hard, and that you can see that impact, happening on their family as well. They really think about the education of their children. We, as a policy, we also support, education of, their children, of women that work with us. So I think when you impact a woman, you impact an entire family. So that's very evident from what we have seen so far.
Namaste, Swati. We have stevia plants at home. Is it possible to use directly without any processing?
Yes. So just a leaf, if you put it in your mouth, it's very sweet. You can directly put it in your chai and boil it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Swati. This is Jeanette.
Hello.
I am sure you have been an inspiration to a lot of us in Agnes students today. But how could you take it further and convince them that farming of stevia is one of a good entrepreneurship?
You mean how do we convince the students?
Yeah, because one talk
Okay.
wouldn't be enough, right?
Right. I think field visits could be a good idea. And like I said, that my journey started with a summer school, which was a very enriching experience, not just from a technical standpoint and learning standpoint, but also kind of, bonding with your friends or colleagues. Because if you want to start a business, you have to learn how to work with people. I think that's a very important skill that I think universities and schools need to start teaching as well and start focusing on. That how do you work in teams? So I think those kind of activities, group activities, field visits, farm visits, I think that could probably, incite that interest.
Hello, I'm Shruti.
Just hold the mic closer, please.
Yeah. Usually we have all these blocks that we have to get over. I remember you spoke about a farmer who said, please get us water. So how did you overcome that, specifically with such a situation where farmers do not have access to water?
Right, so water actually is, access to water, in certain areas, of course, it's very difficult. And this I was giving as an example. But in the area where we are working in UP, it's not the groundwater level that's the issue. It's actually access to infrastructure. that's a problem. So there we have come up with shared models. For example, you bring together, say, 20, 30 farmers, and then they kind of pool together some money to have a common boring, and then they can all use it, and they can schedule when who is going to use it when, basically. So things like shared models, I think shared community models work really well in these kind of, especially when we work with smallholder farmers. Same with electricity. I mean, we have had farmers, we have worked on farms that had no connection to electricity in itself. And despite having subsidy and all the support from the government, getting a new connection is still very time-taking and expensive. So what we suggest is that you pool together 4 or 5 farmers together, and then you do it. So those kind of models have worked out in the past.
Swati, before we close this session, I just have one very curious question for you. You mentioned that you faced a lot of difficulties. There were fires, there was threats to life. What was that all about? I mean, you're working in an industry which is actually sweetening people's lives. So how is it a threat to somebody else?
Right. So this happened when we actually went to a rural area.
Just move the mic closer.
Yeah. So this happened when we moved to, we started our first nursery in a rural area in UP. And we set up a basic infrastructure, a poly house and a shade house there. And one day we got a call from our supervisor and farm manager that somebody had put fire in the storeroom that we had, and everything had gotten burned. We didn't understand what was happening and why would somebody do that. So we filed a complaint. You know, they tried to find the miscreant, but they couldn't. And then, you know, started business as usual, got back to, life went back to normal. But I think after a month or so, it happened again in the same storeroom. This time, they also destroyed everything before actually putting fire on it. Again, we filed a complaint. To be honest, I mean, it happened a couple of times. We could never find why somebody would do that and who did it. We never found out, but eventually it stopped. And the way it stopped was me and my co-founder Manish, we actually used to camp there because our employees working there had gotten really scared that, you know, they were not from UP. I mean, they had moved from other places to work with us, and they were really scared that how do you deal with this kind of a situation. And now today they are putting fire, tomorrow they can do something else. So my co-founder Manish, he actually started camping there. And thankfully his dad was in police, so he also helped. We used to do like random patrolling at odd hours. And eventually after 3-4 times it stopped. Our assessment says that it probably happened because the local people kind of got scared because there was no industry, nothing in that entire area, and they were just not sure what was happening. They were probably, you know, thinking that these outsiders are going to come here and probably exploit us and exploit our resources. But I think once they saw that we were going to stay there and we were not going to get scared, I think then they kind of backed out.
Right.